that I need to have solved. So the guarantee might help to decrease the risk of the purchase. It would not be the primary reason why a person or why a company would buy your product. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
You seem like you're not convinced.
Well, in my case, so if I want to convince a parent that their child's going to enhance their vocabulary in a second language by 25%, or they're going to learn 25, we promise that they're going to learn 25 words. And if they don't, then they'll get accessibility to the next app that we release or
Yep.
something.
So the primary reason that people would want to buy your product is because you've got some kind of process of learning that is more efficient than other people. Like versus going to a Berlitz course or going and buying, what are those things that you see everywhere now?
Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta Stone, yeah. So it's compared to Berlitz or Rosetta Stone, like, come use our app and maybe it's a lot less expensive too, I don't know.
Yes.
And you say like, okay, Rosetta Stone's $500 and this is what usually happens when people buy Rosetta Stone, and ours is $50 and you'll actually learn 25% faster. Then it's a combination of efficiency and cost.
Okay.
The money back guarantee is sort of like a nice to have. It can be particularly challenging as a startup though, offering guarantees, because when you're a new company, especially if you're selling to enterprises, larger companies, like if I'm doing a $100,000 transaction with somebody, if I'm a large company and I'm going to work with a software firm or I'm going to partner with you folks on how to do a better job with legal or something like that, then the guarantee working with a startup is actually pretty worthless. And because if your product doesn't work, you're probably going to go away as a company. You're probably going to disappear altogether. So offering a guarantee doesn't really do that much for people. They're instead making the purchasing decision because they feel like specifically they think you can increase revenue, decrease cost, or increase efficiency, or decrease risk. So I think maybe it's different for consumer stuff because there's less of a risk if I'm putting down $50 for an app versus paying $100,000 or even $1 million or more for an enterprise sale. It could take 6 months or 12 months to execute, and then I'm going to integrate it into my systems. There's like all these other things, like offering the people that I've worked with at some banks, for example, like if I said, hey, you're going to use the software and it's going to take us 6 months to fully integrate it, we're going to retrain 50 people to use it, and oh, by the way, if it doesn't work, you get a money back guarantee. Like the guy's like, I don't even care about the money at that point. Now I've completely lost face inside my organization because I sponsored you. I trained 50 people. I told 50 people in my company, this is the next greatest software. It's going to make your life easier, and now it doesn't work. I've got to rip it out in sort of like a metaphorical sense. Maybe I've uninstalled other software I was using before. Now I have to go back and reinstall it. I have to go back to that vendor and tell them, yeah, I know I replaced you guys, but now I actually would like to pick you back up again. All these things happen. So a guarantee in that case, it's like money back guarantee, like the value or the price that I had to pay relative to the contract value is like 10x or 100x more.
I just
Usually
add
when
one
you
more
think
thing.
of guarantee, you're like, oh, my product is gonna have some issues. You don't want that part to come to.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. It's like, oh, and by the way, we have 99.999%
Yeah.
downtime. Which is, so this actually happened to me 3 weeks ago. I was talking to this woman on, I think the company was Ring.io, which is a telecom routing kind of service. And she was going through all of the kind of like we went through the features, what does it do, how much does it cost, all these other things. And she said, and the best thing is that we have 99.999% uptime, and if we're ever down for any reason, that for every 10 minutes that we're down, we'll give you 1% of your monthly fee back to you.
Red flag.
The call went dead at that moment.
Yeah.
It literally went dead. And I called her back. She's like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Just as she had told me this exact thing, everything went out.
Oh,
It would literally happen on the phone. She's
literally.
like, I cannot believe that this just
Oh
happened.
my
Exactly
God.
after I told you about her downtime guarantee. And I laughed and she laughed. I'm like, look, this is like one of those coincidences of life. But this poor woman, I was like, I kind of felt bad for her because I've been on that side. And so she's like espousing this uptime and we give you this refund and all this other stuff. And I even joked, I said, well, I hope you didn't give your own money back to yourself. for your own service. And the chances are I'll probably still end up using the service because it's just one of those things that happen. It was just so funny that it happened at that one moment. So,
Maybe she did that on purpose to garner empathy so that you'll use it.
see,
Oh my God.
maybe.
Amen.
She probably does it all the time.
Maybe New York has seeped into me. I don't know.
And you're tough.
Yeah, I'd add one more thing. If you have an accountant who knows what they're doing and you put out money back guarantees, they're gonna make you accrue that revenue. You won't be able to recognize it based upon a historical rebate rate. So you actually pull money out of your company. You can't recognize it because it's not really a sale. So what'll happen is they'll look at what percent, or someone will sit down and say, Deborah, what percent of the time do you think you're gonna get back the money? They go, okay, you'll say, 5%, 2%, okay. We're just gonna hold back that amount from your financials. It'll be set aside. And then, as you get experience, maybe we can adjust it down or up. And how long will it take before you know it's actually a true sale? That you don't have to do it. Then you'll come up with an answer on that, and they say, okay, that's the period, that's the point in time when you can recognize that revenue. So while there's the safety aspect, there's the financial hit as well.
Yeah, there's like, I've seen you, it's funny you mention that because now I remember seeing like rebates and refunds. If you dive into like the financials of a company, a lot of times, if it's really well established, they'll have like a slush fund that they have to kind of keep aside for these purposes, So anyway, I mean, so the guarantees can be interesting. They might be useful in a consumer sense based on how it's used. In an enterprise sense, in a partnership sense, it's probably not something that you want to dive into. So, you know, typically when I'm doing like a larger, longer presentation, we'll actually sit down and think about why customers buy your product. So I think it would be a useful exercise just to kind of play around with it. We can just do it together since we're in a small group. So maybe start with Jessica and Heather. What do you think? We talked about it a little bit. So if you had to choose one of these four things, and you can only choose one of those four, what do you think the primary reason is that people come to you for your service?
Our company or our product? Because I think so that discussion earlier, and you know, she's a salesperson, so I'll let her comment after, but just based on that conversation, it sounds like for our product, a lot of it is minimizing risk, but for our company, you know, it would be a combination of efficiency and cost.
I agree.
So if it's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to incorporate my business, I want to get this done, what's going to get me to hit the buy button?
Right. I mean, incorporated business is one thing which we can do. There's usually a reason you want to get it done right away. If you're stressed about something because you want to accept some financing, or because you want to like sign a contract and you don't have an entity
Interesting.
yet.
Yep.
Right. So there's a whole process you've got to go through before you incorporate. Right. Like
Okay.
you've got to figure
Yep.
out who the shareholders, who the directors, all this stuff. So what you'd like about us is that we could be like, this is how long it usually takes, this is how much it costs,
Mhm.
and this is how far we can get you, like, right now. And
Yep.
then you can book your call with your lawyer for Monday morning to finish it up, and we can,
So you kind of roadmap it for
you'll know exactly
people.
how long it
It's
takes.
the Domino's pizza tracker for,
Yeah, so like, you'll know exactly how much it's
For
gonna cost, exactly how much it's gonna take, and you can take the action to get you started, so that you relieve a lot of that stress on yourself. So like, you can pay, you can pick your lawyer, and you'll get I just did this last night, and you get like the whole questionnaire to get started, and so you know that it's like, you know, it's underway. So if it's Friday now, unfortunately, like, you probably won't have your call with your lawyer until Monday, or at least you know then
Yep.
when it's gonna be. Incorporating is one of the areas that we're actually like not super excited about because it's already so commoditized. But if it was like something where time is really of the essence, is like when you get fired and they're like, oh my god, I need someone to review my
Right.
employment agreement, and it's Friday night, and I only
Right,
have
right.
5 days, and
yeah, they called me in the office at 4:30 on Friday and said, you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Most people get
'Cause
fired
that's
on
how it
Fridays,
happens, yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly.
And so then they're trying to find a lawyer. They only have 5 days, and like
Okay.
no lawyer's answering their phone because it's nighttime and da da da. So we can get them through that process where you submit it. You know the price. You know you can book the
Interesting.
time with the lawyer. So you know that like first thing Monday morning you're gonna have a call. Your lawyer will have reviewed your documents. You already
Okay.
submitted them all. You told the story, so that like you know okay. So if I've got to be in my meeting by Tuesday, okay, I've got this all done.
Yep.
The lawyer, you wouldn't even call back from another law firm or anybody else until
Yeah.
like, you know, maybe Tuesday anyway.
Yeah, so I could see that's definitely a risk, like decreasing my risk and also increasing my efficiency. It's probably those two things, right?
Yeah.
Because I could go and shop around and call 50 law firms and figure out who was willing to take my case and how much the fees are and all these other things. If instead I know that for a fixed price, and I'm going to be able to make progress on this by X, and to get that visibility that Monday morning I have a call with an attorney for my Tuesday meeting, then it's a risk play. So yeah, that makes sense.
And so I just to call with an attorney to talk and find out how much it is, and like maybe to figure out, like, you know exactly
Yeah.
when your problem will be solved.
Right, so it's much more, so it's definitely an efficiency. in
Yeah,
that case.
definitely.
Yeah.
So one of the, that's great, because it's a super efficient industry.
Yeah, and so as you're going out and starting to market this, do you have users yet or no?
Yeah,
You do?
Yeah.
How many?
I mean, we're like serving our first like 10 customers, like in
Great.
public beta, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, in a very typical marketing sense, right, you'll want to do a lot of A/B/C testing on verbiage and how to, what is the wording that gets people to respond? Because it's like, that same person that sees a banner ad or a Google AdWord that says, just got terminated, call an attorney on Monday.
Yeah.
That's like, maybe it's like the fish, and I'm not a marketing person, but you have to figure out the right wording to position from an efficiency standpoint. Then you also want to run a banner ad that says, just got fired, make sure that you're not getting taken as a dope
Yeah.
by your employer, decrease your risk by talking to an attorney now. Like, so kind of like running those A/B tests are gonna help you figure out maybe the click-throughs are better for one, but the conversions are better for another. Like, you don't really know.
Interesting.
So you want to play with that, and even, maybe even cost could be a case there too.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
so you want to kind of run these different ads different ways, so that you can identify what it is. Like Geico does this from a consumer standpoint. I find this so interesting, that Geico has a number of advertising campaigns going on at the same time. Like they have the gecko, they have the caveman thing that was going on for a while, that was actually running the same time as the gecko one. I don't think the cave one's running anymore. What's the other? Save 15 minutes in car
right.
insurance.
Pinocchio, the whole.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
actually have different, it's the same exact product, but they're marketing in different ways. And the reason they do that is they've identified different market segments. Some people respond well to animals. There's like a very typical advertising ploy is to use an animal in your advertising, right? Some people respond really well to that. Other people respond to a more kind of like practical, say, 15%, 15 minutes or whatever it is. Other people respond to the Pinocchio thing, right? And so that's just them understanding that it's all the same product, it's just how you get, like you were talking about customer acquisition as a primary focus of your business. You gotta think about what those sub-funnels are. And you can do the same thing with different businesses. So with you, Depti, with the alert, right, it's the same thing. It's like targeting entrepreneurs as a segment and targeting really big company people as a segment. Like I worked at a really large company called CoreLogic, and like 75% of my day, I measured it once. I went back over like 3 months and did like a rolling average. 75% of my days were spent on internal meetings alone. And I would get like, it's just like big company stuff. Like anytime somebody saw like, I'd have meetings from like 8 until noon and then 12:30 to 4. And then somebody would see that 30 minutes open and they would just like book a meeting with me. I'm like, I gotta eat, And so,
I used to just block my calendar.
well, that's what I started doing, right?
Yeah.
So like the pain I was feeling might be different than, say, an entrepreneur. So like you have the people that are different market segments, but even within each of those segments, you gotta figure out, is it an efficiency thing or is it a risk thing about missing a meeting? Like working at a big company, missing a meeting, it's like people miss meetings all the time, so there's no real risk. But say an entrepreneur that's starting out, they never ever want to miss a meeting because that can be devastating to the business. So sort of playing around with the different
I also
messages.
have this element of fun that I'm playing around with, like I use it as a
Right.
fun thing.
Right.
So I'm targeting it for like millennials who find this like, oh yeah, this is cool kind of.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And same thing with the language thing too. It's playing with these different reasons that people would buy. And then I'm trying to think for your company.
Sorry. We have the efficiency and the decreasing risks and the.
Decreasing the risk?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. One of sorry.
It's okay.
Making efficient the time of the brainstorming. It doesn't have to use paper or and automatically saving the digitally and
Did you?
digitalized
Digitized. It's okay.
Yeah, and reducing the risk of the losing the parameter on the project when they are brainstorming it.
Okay, got it. Okay, so same thing, you just want to figure out what those different messages are. So it's interesting because it's like a mix of what is the message, but then what is the difference between, I mentioned this earlier, the difference between an implied need and an explicit need, right? So like I remember at my house we use Comcast internet, and I like literally every day complain about it. My wife, like, it happened yesterday afternoon. My son's taking a nap. My wife's trying to get some research done. I'm in the bedroom trying to get caught up on some things, and it's like super slow. My wife comes in and she's like, "Internet slow for you?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's slow for me. I switched over to my phone. I use my phone hotspot at home now sometimes because Comcast is so slow." It's been an issue for like 3 years, and I even called AT&T once and said, "Look, I want to switch over," and it turns out the switching cost was, both from a time and monetary standpoint, it was actually pretty painful because they had to like set up an appointment to send somebody out. I had to buy, like their price, their top line price was cheaper, except I had to go buy all this hardware. I had to use AT&T hardware, which I couldn't buy. I couldn't just use it. I had to like buy it, like $200 or whatever it was. And it just got to the point where it's just like, I couldn't get over that dotted line where I wanted to take action. So I got to the point where it's a big enough problem. I knew it was slowing me down. It's still a pain, but I still haven't taken action. So that's me being a lazy cow. It's like, I know this is painful. I know my life would be better, but for me to like literally take the time to do it, I'm just like, ah. And then the risk is, what if AT&T really isn't that much faster? Right? Maybe it's just the wireless modem, which we've replaced once or twice. Maybe I just picked a bad modem. Maybe I should go spend some time at Radio Shack and get like a $200 souped up awesome Wi-Fi router. Maybe that'll solve my problem. But even that's a risk, because now I gotta go spend time, I gotta go to Radio Shack, which I don't ever want to do. And then I gotta spend $200, and then I gotta disassemble all the wiring, which I'm terrible at. I don't build things. It's not what I do, which is why spending $500 at the hardware store is a big deal. It's just not who I am. And so all these things are preventing me from taking action. And so it's still a need, but it's not so explicit where I've like missed a deadline, or my wife tried to submit a research paper before a journal deadline and missed because the Wi-Fi was down or something. At that point, it would probably light enough of a fire under me to go and do it. So a lot of times it's our job, whether you're doing consumer facing app or in the enterprise, it's helping person identify first as the person selling the product, the company selling the product, figuring out where people are on this continuum, right? Because if people say, it's pretty good, I can deal with it, that's one thing. If you start getting more and more into the bigger box, like it's a bigger problem than I realize, that's where you're actually educating the consumer. Like saying, wow, you didn't realize how big of a problem this is. And this is where things like, in the consumer world, like blog posts are great to share that information and findings. Like identifying specific efficiency gains that consumers have felt, or having testimonials. You even see this on websites, like, wow, I never knew how much I was paying in car insurance until I switched to Geico, and I'm now saving 15%. Like those kinds of things. It's like a lot of people don't realize how much money they might be spending on a product that they shouldn't be, or that there's other solutions out there. And so you have to figure out, well, how do you get those people to go from, it's a big problem, it's a problem, I can live with it, getting them to say, wow, it's a bigger problem than I realized, to the point where you say, oh my gosh, I have to do something now. Whether it's like I have to do something now and it's on the website, or it's like educating parents over time that might be thinking over the course of months, like coming up to the summer, I want to get my son to learn some Mandarin, and he's really interested in going to China when he's 14 on an exchange trip. Like, how do I know that just buying a Berlitz course or just buying I always forget the name of it,
Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta Stone is going to be good enough.
Yeah. I'm going to help you replace Rosetta Stone with Tippy Tom Tales.
Tippy Tom Tales.
Yeah, isn't that better?
Is that yours?
Yes. Exactly. This is a bit intimidating,
How so?
because wanting to change people's perceptions. I mean, and behaviors, that's big.
Mhm.
So all of us have clearly identified a problem and a solution.
Yeah,
The question is, how do we effectively communicate this problem when these lazy cows don't even realize they have a problem? In my case, it's a bit overwhelming because part of the audience I want to reach are uneducated to begin with.
what do you mean by that?
So there's 65% of all Hispanics in the United States are Mexican.
Mhm.
And they have the lowest educational attainment levels out of all the Latinos in the United States. And
Okay.
they are the ones that desperately need their
They
children
need to learn
to
English.
learn English.
Got it.
So it's an expensive proposition to
Mhm.
change behavior. It can be done through the power of broadcast, because Univision has like a 95% household penetration, and that
Right.
TV is always on. So that's why I'm saying it's like a bit overwhelming.
What if you were to take the perspective that instead of broadcast, you went the exact opposite way? So here's the story I'm thinking about. If you remind me, I'll send a link out to this. Gail Goodman is a CEO at Constant Contact. You've all heard of this email marketing software. About 2 years ago, she did a presentation called The Long, Slow Ramp of Death for SaaS companies, software as a service companies. And for almost 10 years, they had this perfect linear growth on Constant Contact. They were using banner ads, they tried their own email campaigns, they tried going to conferences, digital marketing, this and that, everything. And they finally hit this inflection point where their growth went from linear to boom, after like 10 years. And this is how they got there. 2 ways. They started doing radio ads, and they started doing workshops at local chambers of commerce. Radio ads and workshops at local chambers of commerce. And do you know why those worked for them? Their target market was a small business guy, a woman, person running the restaurant, person that had their own tax consulting company, the accountant down the street, the attorneys with 10 people in the office. Turns out those people are driving to the office back and forth every day, listening to the radio, and they're going to the Chambers of Commerce events because they're trying to network. And they know nothing about digital marketing. They knew nothing about digital marketing. They use email at work, they use Google. They usually, when they want to open up the internet, they go to google.com because they think that's like how you get onto the internet. They just don't know. And it was through that education that they taught people, like, hey, we're going to do this free workshop. This is how you could use email marketing to run, coupons or have frequent, repeat guests at restaurants and those sorts of things. And so, while the broadcast is important from a marketing standpoint, a lot of times getting people to take action needs to be a very, very local decision. And so, a lot of the lean startup stuff talks about this. Like, don't try to find 100 customers, get one customer, and figure out what that one customer did. So, in your case, I could imagine partnering with local churches. Go to Catholic churches that are offering a Spanish service, or go to different neighborhoods and partner with the chamber, whether it's Chamber of Commerce or maybe it's the city Department of Education. My mom was a superintendent, not a superintendent, she was an administrator for a school district, and she was in New Jersey in a very rural area. In fact, they had this No Child Left Behind thing, which I don't know if it's still around. It was during the Bush administration. They had to literally pay this one student, but 45 minutes away, they had to pay for a taxi to go pick up this kid every day and bring him to this school because of this No Child Left Behind. And in New Jersey, South Jersey, it's very rural, lots of farms, especially out where she was. And same problem, a lot of kids would show up, 3rd grade, never spoke English before in their life. And so that's where you're finding these really specific, because these are people that already know they're here, as opposed to I watch Univision and I should do that, I should do that, I should do that. But getting from watching something on Univision to taking an action, what action are they going to take when they see it on Univision? Do they even have a smartphone?
Yes, they do.
They do have a smartphone?
Oh, yeah.
So then figuring that out, that conversion, how do you get them from TV to actually taking action on the phone right away might be a lot more difficult versus partnering with and anchoring yourself to a church or a local Chamber of Commerce group or an education group and find 5 kids.
Right,
Take
that's
this
so
class.
helpful, because I come from kind of old school marketing, learning a lot in the process about digital marketing, and I ran the whole Hispanic marketing PR for the Passion of the Christ, and we went after churches.
Yep.
So we did a lot of faith-based, grassroots. So it's you're
Bush won the election
you're
a couple
enlightening
terms
me
ago,
about.
right? Think about how they
Yeah.
won. They went to all these church groups, and those people, they said, hey, zero in on certain districts in
Yes.
Ohio, and they went to certain churches. That was the whole Karl Rove, the genius. That's how he did it. I mean, he's a marketing guy.
Right.
That's all he did.
What you're helping me realize is I don't need to let go of all those old school strategies
No, I
and
would
implement them in this
embrace
space
those.
as well.
Because those
Awesome.
people, you're gonna have a personal relationship with those people, and in 3 months, those people are gonna come back to you with tears in their eyes and say, oh my God, my son Jose learned English, and now he went from hating to go to school every day. I had to he would scream and kick, he didn't want me to drop him off at school. Now he can't wait to get to school every day. Imagine that feeling that you're gonna get, and that you'll be able to translate that to other people. So getting that personal connection is where you start building that sort of cult around your company.
Love it.
And you can do the same thing with legal, you can do the same thing with yours. It's like, go find a company, maybe there's, where you have some friends, whether it's a big company like, say, McKinsey consulting firm or
So you
whatever.
go back to my company, Southern California Edison.
Yeah, there you go, a huge company, right? Find one person in one department and get 4 or 5 people to use this alert, figure out if they're using Outlook and have your app
Yes.
connect with Outlook. And
Totally.
maybe you just start with, company meetings and internal stuff, and then you start bridging. Like the smaller you make the experiment, the more that you're gonna be able to learn, because you're gonna be able to abstract out variables. Univision is too much. I have no idea why people, what's the message there?
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's what I talk about, this implicit. So another way to think
Can
about
I
it.
add one thing?
Yeah, please.
Go where your customer is. Don't have them come to you. That's what
Yeah.
you were just saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But figure out who that most, if you go back, who is closest to wanting to do something? And that's what good salespeople and that's what startups do. Is they spend time figuring who's close instead of going out and talking to everybody, and then go where they are. And if they don't say, I care, go find somebody else. Because you spend too much time educating.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, it's almost like, how do you make what is eventually in your mind, you have this vision for this company. You want it to be a sort of this big digital software kind of company. You could run this business without software. You just have a couple tutors, like some high school kids that speak Spanish. You're like, hey, I'm gonna pick you up at 3 o'clock every day. We're gonna go to this Spanish neighborhood. And at the community center, there's gonna be 10 kids at 4th grade that are gonna learn English from you. And you're gonna use whatever methodology for your software. It's not scalable. So that's okay, because you have to figure out how to scale down the road. If you try to build to where you want to be today, you're not going to know how to get there. So Paul Graham wrote this really good essay. You guys know who Paul Graham is?
Yeah.
He wrote this essay, Do Things That Don't Scale.
Which things that don't scale?
Do things that don't scale. So my work at Blend, we just went through this last year. We literally have spent, since April of last year, we're almost a full year now, with one customer in Dallas, Texas. And over the last year, we now have 40 people working in our company. And almost every single person in our company has been to this customer location at least once. There was a point in the fall where I was there 8 out of 9 weeks. I'd fly down there on Monday, come back Wednesday, or go down Tuesday, come back Thursday. And I was literally sitting with the customer, helping them figure out how to map their process into our software. And I was more like a Deloitte consultant than I was like a software salesperson. That was the only way we were going to get those people to actually adopt our software. Because if I would have just said, hey, this is how it works, just put it in your flow chart, and then we'll build the code, and then you guys will be off and running, it would have never worked. So for those 8 or 9 weeks, I was sitting there even before we launched. Then we launched the software, and I hired another guy who joined the team, and there was 50 of these agents, calling agents, using our software every day. And he literally, over the course of like 3 weeks, sat with every agent, one by one, log in. Let me see you log into the site. Okay, you can't log in, there must be an issue, let me resolve that problem with you. Okay, now you're logged in, let's do a call together. And he would sit there on listen-only mode as people were calling. And he did that with 50 people. He was like a waiter at one point. He was just like jumping all around the cubicles. It's like, we can't do that for every customer down the road. We did it for this one, because now that customer now, a year later, this VP of this division is like in love with us. He loves us. Because he's running his business on 50 agents, even though he's allowed to hire 65. With our software, he only needs 50. So he's saving about $50,000 per person per year. It's like huge cost savings. Each calling agent, instead of making about 50 to 60 calls a day, is now able to do anywhere from 75 up to 100 because they're using our software. A huge efficiency gain. And we're creating information for him that he can run a report at the end of the day and see exactly what happened with every calling agent. He didn't have that before. So it's like, but if we wouldn't have done that sort of like mass focus, we never would have gotten there. And so you have to do things that don't scale, especially at the beginning. So don't be afraid of it, embrace it. That's the fun part. Because later on, when you're like, you've got a big company and a big team and all these people are doing this